Yeah, so where you're talking about the culture war and in the new book and the stuff that's been put out already, it's about how one of the points I remember was that DEI or diversity programs hiring not based on merit has it choked the ability to make advancements or to hire the right people in your opinion? What's sort of the thesis behind what you're talking about here and what the main effect these things have had
Yeah.
on research or
Well,
development?
well, I mean, there's a lot of different aspects here. There are 39 authors, and there's all sorts of different aspects. DAI is one aspect. Another is sort of the scientific nonsense being introduced in the scientific curriculum, and as well as in public and cancel culture. But I think there's no doubt it's having an effect. And um, take DEI, for instance. They're young, many of us, and this isn't just me, but I've talked to many colleagues, including, by the way, female colleagues whose male students, white male students or Asian male students in particular, realize that it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to get a job because of that. And that's really I mean, that's a shame. And if the opposite was happening, if you couldn't get as look, 60 years ago, if you were a woman, it was very difficult to get a job in science. But that's 60 years ago. If nowadays you've overtly said, I'm sorry, we're just not going to give women jobs in science, there'd be an outcry. But the fact that young males are well, in Canada they're being overtly discriminated against. It's legal to have ads. I mean, take the ad from. I got an ad here. One of the ones that mentioned the book, University of Waterloo computer science advertisement. Position available in all areas of artificial intelligence. The call is open to qualified individuals who self-identify as women, transgender, gender fluid, non-binary, or two-spirit. And there's a host of those things where people see in Canada, you're legally allowed to restrict white advertisements of jobs so that white males or Asian males are not the job isn't open to them. And in fact, a ridiculous residual from the unfortunately for the Trudeau government was that the most prominent job positions in Canada, these Canada research chairs, which were originally created to try and woo expatriate Canadians, in some sense like myself, back to Canada. But in any case, they're very prestigious positions. But they decided that the positions have to match exactly the background demographics of the country. So 52.1% have to be women. It goes on and on, and that means that a lot of places like the University of Toronto and other places and Guelph and many universities have openly said they will not hire males for kind of research chairs because they have to reach this demographic goal. And there's no reason for that. It's discrimination, clearly discrimination, and it's awful for science because good people get cut out, and it also is awful for the people, in my opinion, who get the jobs because they always have an asterisk. It's like in
Mm-hmm.
baseball, when there's certain records, there's an asterisk. If you get a job and if you're a woman and you get a job for positions only open to women for the rest of your career, there's going to be an asterisk. People are going to say, was she any good, or did she get the job because it was only open to women? So it hurts everybody, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and we do see a lot of that in this country. I remember specifically writing about a story in regards to hiring blocks they'll do, and they call this a hiring block where we're going to specifically hire 20 people of one specific race. And the idea that that isn't, you know, prejudice is really confusing to me. Now, I spoke to a reporter who specializes, we'll call it, he's been most popularized through his work, contacting large corporations and questioning them on their policies in relation to race-based hiring or gender-based hiring practices. And he said that some of them, some believe in it, some are against it, some are unaware it's going on in their own company, which is confusing to me. But I wanted to ask you, have you spoken to people who are in charge of giving out these grants or high up university professors who are in charge of some of these things and asked them why they're doing this, and have what kind of results have you had if you have?
Well, look, I mean, I was at universities for 40 years and I was involved in a lot of this, but I mean, many people, universities aren't in control. That's also the sad thing. Universities have become populated by bureaucracies, DEI bureaucracies, and they pull the strings in hiring. It should be the faculty, for example, that hire new faculty. But take University of California, Berkeley, for example. For a long time now, it's we're getting away from that in some sense due to recent executive orders from the current administration. But for many years, in order to apply for a faculty job or sometimes even a postdoctoral position, you had to basically make a DEI statement, which is more than just a loyalty oath. It wasn't a simple statement like I'm not going to discriminate or I'll hire anyone independent of race, creed, color, gender. That wasn't good enough. That wouldn't pass muster. At UC Berkeley, for a biology professor job, I believe in 2019, I think something like 76% of the candidates were rejected, and these are by DEI monitors, were rejected on the basis of their DEI statement before anyone could look at the research statement. I mean, can you imagine that? And so I think a lot of faculty are, just simply don't have control or feel that they have to go along with it, because there are many examples, and some of them in the book are described, where faculty say, hold on, are we doing the right thing? That alone is often enough to get censored or censured, and in some cases fired on the basis of claiming that, well, maybe we should be looking at merit, or maybe we should think about this twice. And that kind of freezing of free speech where faculty are actually afraid to speak is even more terrifying. When I wrote about the ideological corruption of science, I think in a Wall Street Journal article in maybe 2021 or 22, I got a lot of letters back from faculty who agreed with me. These are faculty I didn't know. Emails. And what was striking and terrifying was what a large fraction, and that meant almost all of them, wrote, first of all, from personal email accounts, and in a number of cases under assumed names, because they were so afraid that someone at their university or administrator might see that they agreed with me. Well, that's like the Stasi in whatever, in East Germany or in Russia. I mean, that kind of fear should be the opposite thing. I mean, if there's one place where you should be free to question, it should be academia, because that's the only way knowledge will progress, particularly scientific knowledge. And if you say, as one of the people, Carol Hooven, who wrote it in the book, if you say, biology says that sex is binary, there are two sexes. And she eventually the situation became so bad for her after saying that on TV that she had to resign from her position at Harvard. I mean, even if you disagree with her, although if you know anything about biology, you shouldn't, but even if you disagree with her, you have a disagreement, that's fine. That's what science is all about. Let's have a discussion. But when people are too afraid to speak up or speak out for fear of their jobs, that's really bad. I mean, and it really means you can't progress. You can't, because science is a dialectic. It involves a healthy debate between ideas, so the good ideas survive. And that's one of the reasons why I produced the book. I mean, there's 39 people who are from all different disciplines and many different political persuasions, so it isn't all right-wing or left-wing. But if we're willing to speak out, and there are some prominent names here, then I hope it'll encourage other faculty to speak out as well.
Yeah, maybe by the sounds of it, it's not moving as quickly as some people believe it to be. I think a lot of people have this idea that this sort of thinking, or at least these hiring practices, are becoming far more culturally unpopular than they actually might be. People might be in their bubbles about that. And I wanted to ask you, when did you think this started happening? Did you see it as a slow progression of like, no, you need to make this statement and now we need to have these quotas? Or was there something that sparked it in your eyes?
Well, I mean, it was already developing by 2015 and even earlier, and some prescient people noticed it. I began to notice it. There were certain things you had to do, and I didn't mind them. I was chair of a physics department in the 1990s. And every time we didn't hire a woman, if we didn't for any position, we had to write a long letter explaining why we didn't hire that person. Okay, you still had to show that they were the best person, but and that's fine. And in fact, when I was there, we hired the first two women in the physics department. But I think that the need for that is gone. But I think the need for the extreme wokeness, the extreme political correctness and social justice aspect, that really began to hit more probably after George Floyd. I mean, that's when it really hit a crescendo. That's when departments and scientific institutions went crazy claiming that academia was systemically racist and all scientific disciplines were systemically racist or sexist. So it really reached a nutty crescendo by 2020, 2021, and it went out, and it may have peaked, but it's still very. The problem is bureaucracies are entrenched, and so once you create them, it's very hard to get rid of them. My friend of mine, Sheldon Glashow, is a colleague of mine, won Nobel Prize in physics, said, they still have donkeys from the Civil War. Once you have a bureaucracy, it's hard to get rid of it. But also, once you require people to buy in order to get a job, you tend to get people who have bought in. Now, some people will just do it, they'll look up ChatGPT or something and get a good statement, whatever that may be, and they don't believe it. They just want to get on with their work. But if you're self-selecting for people who think that social justice is what they're hired to do instead of scholarship, then you have big problems. And then the other big problem, which happened early on, and then I think the internet and mobs really began to affect things. And that again was probably started around 2015, 2016. Are the heads of institutions have no backbone. Mm-hmm. They would rather get rid of faculty or do anything than have a social justice campaign against them in any way. And you can see universities switching on a dime to see what's in their best interest. And they'll get rid of free speech or due process or whatever else. And then you have institutional leaders virtue signaling. When Francis Collins, who was the head of the National Institutes of Health, and I know Francis, after George Floyd, stating that the biomedical sciences were systemically racist, he was head of the largest biomedical sciences research institute in the world. And if they really were systemically racist, he should have resigned if he really believed what he said. And so this kind of virtue signaling, just to get on the bandwagon, to get ahead of the crowds, or to be willing to shut something down for fear that some individual student or a bunch of students will start a social media campaign, a letter campaign. It's awful. University presidents used to have some intellectual integrity, and now most of them are salespeople trying to raise money, but from donors, and they'll look to see which side the wind is blowing on and move in that direction.